$3,000 for accommodations at a luxury hotel, $1,000 for meals at upscale restaurants, $500 at a renowned spa. What on earth is this? I happened to glance at the credit card statement, something my husband usually handles. A series of charges caught my eye, each more shocking than the last. Even more unsettling, all these extravagant reservations were made for the same dates. Those were the days when my husband, who serves on the PTA at our daughter's middle school, was supposed to attend a board retreat. Even though I'm not well versed in these things, I know exactly what this means. To support me in my demanding job, my husband chose to be a stay-at-home dad. Thanks to his dedication to our family, I've been able to focus on my career without worry. I've always been grateful to him, thinking he was too good to be true. But now, I fear his intentions might not have been so pure. Carefully, I slip something into his wallet. Then, I make a call to someone. In a week, he'll likely leave with high spirits. I hope this will be an unforgettable memory for him. My name is Maggie, and I'm a nurse at a university hospital. My days are so busy that I sometimes lose track of time, blending days and nights together. The reason I can keep up with this hectic schedule is my beloved husband, Glenn. I love my job and take pride in it, but the thought of choosing between my marriage and my career has brought me to tears more than once. Glenn respected my determination and chose to become a full-time stay-at-home dad to support our family. He's always encouraged me to give my all at work, never minding the curious glances from other mothers. He even served on the PTA board at our daughter Sasha's middle school. As the breadwinner, I've worked hard to provide for my family. Then, one day, I received a call from the credit card company. I had recently changed the debit account for convenience, but the funds hadn't been deposited in time, leading to an overdraft. Darn it. I muttered as I hurried to check the credit card statement so I could make the transfer. I hadn't looked at the statement in years, trusting Glenn to handle it. I realized just how careless I'd been. My heart nearly stopped when I saw the charges on my phone screen. The total amount was outrageous, and I couldn't recall making any of those purchases. Panicking, I decided to review the details. There I found a long list of transactions I had no memory of: designer boutiques, famous perfumes, a luxury watch brand. I liked those brands, but I hadn't bought anything from them recently. For a moment, I wondered if Glenn, who had a family card, was planning to surprise me, but I hadn't received anything. What's more, all these purchases were made on Wednesdays, the day I work the night shift, and Glenn has his board meeting. What's going on? I resolved to confront him as soon as I got home. I hurried home, anxiety tightening my chest. Just as I was about to reach my front door, a voice called out to me. "Hi, Maggie. Long time no see. Heading home from work?" It was Tara, one of the few PTA moms I knew from school. She was always friendly, and I had run into her just before I could slip inside. "Hey, long time. Thanks for always helping Glenn out with PTA stuff," I said, trying to sound casual. "I hope he's not giving you too much trouble." I didn't know what else to say, so I stuck to the familiar, safe topics. Tara smiled and gave me a playful nudge on the shoulder, teasing me for acting a little distant. As she shifted closer, a familiar fragrance filled the air, a perfume I knew all too well. It was the signature scent of Puffy Marie, the very same brand listed on my credit card statement. I'd wanted that perfume for ages, had tested it multiple times at the store, but never ended up buying it. The scent lingered in the air, unmistakable, tugging at memories. "Smells amazing," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's the one I've been eyeing forever. Did you buy it?" I didn't even know why I asked her that. Maybe it was jealousy, maybe it was something deeper. Either way, I felt a twinge of embarrassment for my own foolishness. But then my mind started to race. Those credit card charges were always made on Wednesdays, days when the PTA meetings took place. And now a PTA member was wearing the exact same perfume. As soon as suspicion took root, it began to grow, faster than I could control. Oblivious to my inner turmoil, Tara smiled brightly and said, "Actually, I got it as a gift. It was our anniversary the other day." She giggled, looking as sweet as ever. "Oh, that's so lovely. You two are still so in love," I replied, forcing a smile while trying to push away the dark thoughts creeping into my mind. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, we said our goodbyes. It wasn't surprising that she had the perfume. It was a popular item, after all. Tara always seemed cheerful, even after having kids. and she still spoke about her anniversary with such joy. But one thing caught my attention as I replayed the conversation in my head. She didn't say husband. I stopped abruptly and turned back to where I had last seen her. Of course, she was gone, but the urge to chase after her was overwhelming. Could Glenn and she have something going on? The tiny doubt that had crept into my mind now grew into something I could no longer ignore. The following Wednesday, my family saw me off to work as usual, but I had a different plan. I asked my colleagues to let me leave early. I didn't tell Glenn, of course. Telling him would have defeated the purpose. I waited for him a short distance from our home, watching and waiting. Soon my mother-in-law arrived to babysit, and Glenn left for his meeting, just as he did every week. So far, everything was routine. I followed him to the school, where the board members gathered in a classroom for their meeting. After about half an hour, the meeting ended, and the members began to leave. Most headed straight home, but Glenn lingered, and then he emerged, arm in arm with Tara. They stared into each other's eyes, their fingers intertwined as they walked toward a nearby hotel. They had no idea I was only a few meters behind them, my face twisted with rage and sorrow. I had trusted him, I had loved him. Had he encouraged me to work long hours just to suit his own convenience? I stood there, feeling utterly betrayed and filled with despair. As if to confirm the painful reality, my phone buzzed with a notification, the latest credit card charge, showing the hotel bill he had just incurred. After what felt like an eternity, they finally left the hotel, looking carefree and content. I calmly snapped pictures of them. There were no more tears. Not even a trace of affection remained in my heart. After that day, I avoided Glenn as much as possible, using my work as an excuse. Part of me wanted to divorce him immediately, but that would mean taking Sasha away from her father. I needed time to think, to decide what was best for all of us. Mom? Sasha's sudden voice snapped me back to reality. Since that day, I had been crying alone in the living room in the middle of the night. I thought I was being discreet, but it seemed she had noticed something was wrong. Whether she couldn't sleep or had just woken up, she came out of bed late one night and gently hugged me. I don't want you to be sad. Your enemies are my enemies. I won't forgive anyone who makes you sad. Her words broke the dam that had been holding back all my emotions. I wept like a child, tears of gratitude for her, apologies, and everything else pouring out. If I divorce your dad, things won't be the same as before, I confessed, my voice trembling. We'd have to move, and we wouldn't be able to see him every day. You might even have to change schools and leave your friends behind. I let all my worries spill out, one after another. But she interrupted me, her voice steady and sure. I still want to be with you, Mom. I want to be a nurse like you. I'll be fine, so please, do what you need to do. She held my hands tightly. Thank you, sweetheart, I whispered, feeling a new strength well up inside me. Encouraged by her words, I decided to act on my plan. I had gotten into the habit of checking my credit card statements regularly and soon discovered that Glenn was planning a week-long trip, supposedly for a PTA board retreat. In the past, I would have signed off without a second thought, but common sense told me it was unthinkable for parents with children to be away from home for a week at the same time. Even if it were to happen, the destination and type of hotel Glenn had booked were far from the norm. He had underestimated me, assuming I wouldn't find out, but his attempts to hide the evidence were becoming increasingly difficult. I had gathered more than just a list of credit card transactions. I had detailed records of the courses at a chic restaurant, the confirmation of the hotel booking, and even a request for a surprise cake. I had been so grateful to him for quitting his job and becoming a stay-at-home dad. I felt it was my duty to work hard to provide for our family in return. But I definitely wasn't working so he could betray us and fool around like this. He was not going to get away with this. On my next day off, I calmly set my plan for revenge into motion. First, I called the hotel and every restaurant he had booked. Even though the reservations were made in his name, I knew all the details, and when I mentioned I was his wife, they didn't suspect a thing. Later that night, I took his wallet, which he had left in the living room, and pulled out his credit card. Before we got married, he only carried cash and had never made his own card, aside from the family one we shared. If his only card went missing, he wouldn't immediately think something was wrong, so I replaced it with an expired card I found. It had been renewed about 6 months ago, but I'd been too lazy to dispose of it. I almost laughed at how my own laziness had worked in my favor. The expired card looked identical to the new one, but of course it wouldn't work. If he tried to use it, he quickly realized something was off, but that would only happen once he was far from home. I'm leaving now. Got a lot of discussions to make the school better. Sasha, take good care of your mom. Okay. Glenn left the house smiling, completely unaware of what was coming. Sasha and I saw him off with matching smiles, though mine held a secret. I could have confronted him right then, but strangely, I felt a deep sense of peace, knowing this was the last time I'd see him. Well, let's get started, I said calmly. Yes, Sasha replied. The moment Glenn was out of sight, our smiles vanished, and we rushed to pack our belongings. The movers arrived shortly after, and thanks to their efficiency, we settled into our new home in no time. Excuse me, where should we place these? One of the movers asked, pointing to a stack of boxes. Oh, don't worry about those. Just leave them there, I said. The boxes, filled with Glenn's belongings, were all that remained of him in our lives. I handed them over to another mover who came to pick them up. There was nothing left in the house after that. In the living room, once filled with memories, I left a pile of credit card statements and the photos I had taken of him and Tara. Beside them, I placed my wedding ring, now meaningless, and the dreaded divorce papers. My phone buzzed with missed calls, every single one from Glenn. He must have noticed something was wrong during his trip. Too bad for him. I sent him a text, calmly explaining that I had been unable to respond due to several emergency operations. I glanced at my vibrating phone in the taxi and quickly shoved it to the bottom of my bag. By the time his frantic calls had stopped, my call history was filled with his desperate attempts, almost 100 of them. Sasha and I couldn't help but giggle at the sight. Oh right, I should probably make one last call, I said, smirking. Yeah, that's a good idea, Sasha agreed. We dialed the number. Later that day. What's going on here? Maggie? Sasha? Anybody home? Glenn returned from his week-long affair, brimming with confidence, only to be met with an empty house. His face turned ashen as he saw what I'd left behind. Credit card statements, divorce papers, and a photo of him and Tara. He tried calling me repeatedly, but of course I didn't answer. I blocked him. Then his phone rang. An unknown number. Desperate, he answered, hoping it was me. Hello? What the hell have you done? I was asked to pay for all the bookings I'd already prepaid online, and now my credit card is expired. Do you have any idea how humiliated I was? This is nothing but harassment. Did you have to borrow money from everyone, Glenn? If you borrowed $5,000 from each of them, that's quite a sum. Did you go overseas? I hope Tara didn't give you too much trouble, came the cold, commanding voice from the other end. Glenn went pale and began trembling so badly he couldn't get a word out. Is this Tara's husband? Glenn stammered. Yes, this is her husband. I know everything about you two. I will be demanding alimony from her, and I won't let you both get away with this. The line went dead as soon as he finished. Glenn was left in stunned silence, his mind reeling. Panicking, he tried to contact Tara, but her phone was disconnected. It had already been canceled. It was her husband who had called me earlier that day after I informed him of their affair. He had been surprised, but not devastated. In fact, he sounded deeply sorry, admitting that he had suspected her for some time. It was a shock for Tara's cheating partner to learn that his mistress was someone he knew well. In fact, he even offered to cooperate with me to help with my plans. After getting Tara's parents' address from him, I sent all of Glenn's belongings along with copies of the divorce papers and photos of their affair to them. Naturally, Tara's parents were furious. Their outrage was so intense that the entire neighborhood soon knew about Tara's divorce and her potential loss of custody due to her infidelity. Her parents, who were wealthy and ran a successful local business, were particularly appalled. They had expected their daughter to get their support regardless, but her actions had tarnished their family's reputation. They refused to let her inside their home when she came to them in tears. With nowhere else to turn, Tara ended up living alone in a small apartment, working grueling hours at a notoriously low-paying job to manage alimony payments. Meanwhile, Sasha and I moved in temporarily with my parents until the divorce was finalized. Glenn returned to his old life, though I've stayed in touch with his parents, who still cared deeply for Sasha. According to his father, Glenn now spends every waking moment on the farm, struggling to keep up with alimony and child support payments. His father sounded deeply disappointed in him. My attorney successfully negotiated a substantial alimony settlement on top of child support, making Glenn's monthly payments quite hefty. He'll likely have to work hard for years to come just to get by, with little left for himself. It seems like a relentless struggle. Once the divorce was finalized, Sasha and I moved into a new home. She transferred to a different school, where her new teachers and classmates welcomed her warmly, and she's been thriving in her new environment. With Glenn now a part of the past, I handle the housework myself. Balancing work and home is more challenging than I had anticipated, but I find it preferable to living with deceit and betrayal. I feel rejuvenated and free from the negativity that once clouded my life. I'm more determined than ever to find happiness and put my full effort into everything I do.